Good evening. Welcome to another podcast of what you aren't being told by the media. Today we're going to cover. First I want to say thanks for joining, and if you would, please like and share our content if you're enjoying the content. I'd like to get it out there, get our name out there as well. I've been providing a lot of content lately, so hopefully you guys are enjoying it, and we look forward to any feedback that you might have as well. So on that note, breaking news tonight, breaking late, is the DOJ officially confirms that it has opened a criminal investigation of the Hunter Biden laptop. I'll have more on this probably tomorrow since this is just breaking, but it's been out there, as most people have known, that Tony Bobulinski, who was on Tucker Carlson's show the other night, was interviewed by the FBI, I think on the 23rd. So he said in an interview with James Rosen, and James Rosen is breaking that story that he's confirmed with a DOJ official. But Tony Bobulinski said he was considered a material witness in the investigation. So should be hearing more on that. Not on the mainstream media. I know NBC News contributed 0 seconds to that story. And I think CNN covered it, but more on the, oh, here we go again type of thing. So for all those people in the media who couldn't get enough of the Russian hoax and P-tapes and all the other hysteria that was going on there, they seem to have a different view of this Russia story. It's all Russia disinformation until it's not, right? So, but again, more on that tomorrow as I'm trying to tie up all the Russia comparisons with Ukraine and the Trump administration, the impeachment trial, that kind of thing, versus where we are today. Other bit of news you may have seen, because I know it was reported, but not sure how much they went into it, is the Glenn Greenwald story. Glenn Greenwald resigned from The Intercept today, which is a media outlet that he co-founded. The mainstream media is again probably covering up or not kind of going into why. So I'm going to read a little bit of the letter that he wrote about his resignation, and I've linked it in the description box below as well. But here's an excerpt from it. And this is from him. The final precipitating cause is that The Intercept's editors, in violation of my contractual right of editorial freedom, censored an article I wrote this week, refusing to publish it unless I remove all sections critical of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, the candidate vehemently supported by all New York-based Intercept editors involved in this effort at suppression. The censored article, based on recently revealed emails and witness testimony, raised questions about Biden's conduct. Not content to simply prevent publication of this article at the media outlet I co-founded, these Intercept editors also demanded that I refrain from exercising a separate contractual right to publish this article with any other publication. I had no objection to their disagreement with my views of what this Biden evidence shows. As a last-ditch attempt to avoid being censored, I encouraged them to air their disagreements with me by writing their own articles that critique my perspectives and letting readers decide who is right, the way any confident and healthy media outlet would. But modern media outlets do not air dissent, they quash it. So censorship of my article, rather than engagement with it, was the path these Biden-supporting editors chose. The censored article will be published on this page shortly, and he links a site to that article, as well as linking as well as adding a link to see the emails that go back, that show him and his editors going back and forth, showing the censorship. So his editors are not allowing him to publish an article questioning Hunter Biden and the narrative that the Biden campaign responded with, this is all media or all Russia disinformation. So the media fell in line with it and the Biden take. That's why Biden hid in a bunker for 5 days prior to the last debate. They had to get their story in order and make sure to get it out and get it straight with the media. Most of them got the talking points, the Jake Tappers, the George Stephanopoulos, those guys. Some of the rogue reporters may have gotten the message, but they're trying to win a Pulitzer, right? They're trying to actually do their job. So you're seeing that, that taking place. But the whole Biden going into hunkering down and everything, that's another episode that we'd have to go into. Now, if you're simply okay with the censorship of Glenn Greenwald's voice and his opinion because you disagree with what he wanted to report on and ask, then you have much other serious issues that you need to confront. If you're a person who just confuses Greenwald with being some conservative, well, then you don't know who Glenn Greenwald is. He's been a hero to the left, drawing praise from uber progressive talk show host Rachel Maddow, who said, and of course, she's the face of MSNBC's political opinion. She described him as a quote unquote, the American left's most fearless political commentator. So he's a strong defender of free speech. You can go to his wiki page or go to his page, which I'll quote from in a minute. But he's a strong defender of free speech, constitutional rights for all people, and he frequently writes about criminal justice reform. His credentials span a large area of journalism that began in 2001 at Salon.com. He began writing his own blog called Unclaimed Territory in 2005, which he got a lot of groundbreaking for because it kind of went into the Valerie Plame unmasking in the CIA, digging into her. He's worked for The Guardian, by no means a conservative outlet, and he's offered several bestsellers, How Would a Patriot Act, and With Liberty and Justice for Some. He's claimed as one of the 25 most influential political commentators by The Atlantic, again, not a right-wing organization, and one of America's top 10 opinion writers by Newsweek. He was one of the top 100 global thinkers for 2013 by Foreign Policy. And Greenwald is a former constitutional law and civil rights litigator. He was a columnist for The Guardian until October 13 and is now a founding editor of the new media outlet The Intercept, where he was until he resigned. And he used to be a frequent guest on CNN, MSNBC, and other various outlets. He's won a Pulitzer Award and a George Polk Award. So, and he was critical of, again, going on to his not being a right-wing person. He's been critical of the Bush administration. In 2006, he wrote, and this really kind of applies to all presidents, and he kind of applied this to the Obama administration. If you go through and see kind of the articles that he wrote about the NSA, that's what he won the Pulitzer for, was the Snowden and unmasking of the NSA, that they were collecting all this metadata on us. But he wrote of the Bush administration in 2006. Over the past 5 years, a creeping extremism has taken a hold of our federal government, and it is threatening to radically alter our system of government and who we are as a nation. The extremism is neither conservative nor liberal in nature, but is instead driven by theories of unlimited presidential power that are wholly alien and antithetical to the core political values that have governed this country since its founding. For the fact that this seizure of ever-expanding presidential power is largely justified through endless rank fear-mongering, fear of terrorists specifically, means that not only our system of government is radically changing, but so too are our national character, our national identity, and what it means to be an American. That obviously is part and parcel for kind of where we are today. You have everybody fears that Donald Trump's becoming a dictator, yet he's not using fear of terrorists, foreign terrorists anyway. You have Antifa terrorists, but you're not seeing the endless wars that were going on under Obama and George Bush. That George Bush started, Obama continued, as well, going into Syria and doing all this other stuff. But Trump has been anti-war, anti-going war on terrorism overseas, other than al-Baghdadi and killing a couple other key people. But as far as putting troops in harm's way, hasn't been doing that. Greenwald goes on. He blames the rise of ISIS on the war in Iraq and NATO intervention in Libya. So he is hitting Bush there for the war in Iraq and the rise of ISIS. But he's also hitting Obama for the NATO intervention and our invasion of Libya, or not invasion, but the Benghazi meltdown, and our pillaging Libya, taking all their gold. But that's another Hillary Clinton story we'd have to get into another time. And so, again, he won the Pulitzer for his work on the Snowden documents. What he said of Trump was, I think the Trump White House lies more often, and I think it lies more readily. I think it lies more blatantly. So Greenwald said that, choosing between Trump and what, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it the deep state, call it the national security blob, call it the CIA and the Pentagon, is like choosing between Bashar al-Assad or al-Qaeda or ISIS in Syria once the ordinary people of the Syrian revolution got defeated. So by no means is he a fan of Donald Trump. He expressed skepticism, and this kind of goes back and parlays into his being, pro free speech, kind of pro Fourth Amendment, and pro civil rights for all Americans. He expressed skepticism of the James Clapper NSA and the U.S. intelligence community's assessment that Russia's government interfered in the 2016 presidential election. Greenwald has stated that this is the stuff we do to them and have done to them for decades and still continue to do. In 2018, he said, I do regard the Mueller indictment as some evidence, not conclusive, but at least some evidence finally that the Russians are involved. But that doesn't say the extent to which Putin was involved, let alone the extent to which Trump officials are criminally implicated. And he has referred to the Democrat Party on this whole Russia rhetoric as quote unquote unhinged. He's criticized the Israeli government and its foreign policy influence in the U.S. and its occupation of the West Bank. Check that off with what leftists love. This one will really get leftists all riled up in love and support for him. He defended Ilhan Omar's tweet in 2019, which said, quote unquote, it's all about the Benjamins, baby, which was a racist rant referring to support for Israel, kind of saying that the Jews are all about money, and said it was unfair that she got labeled as anti-Semitic. He has made a strong stand for Julian Assange and his releasing of the Iraq war documents that were damning, very damning, of George W. Bush administration. And then he was critical of Trump and the getting Assange charged under the Espionage Act of 1917. So he's been critical of all administrations. So before you scoff and then write him off, obviously some right-wing nut jobs, he's trying to cover this Joe Biden, Hunter Biden story before we go to the polls and elect a president. And again, a lot of the growing consortium of the left, the Jake Tappers and James Carvilles and all of these left-wing people on media, they're trying to tell you that, look, this is nothing. It's a nothing story. NBC wrote some article today that made literally no sense. As there's some paper that was put out, a 50-something page paper. I actually have it here on my computer that was done by some outfit called Typhoon Investigations. The guy came out and said, I was actually one that penned a lot of it. They posted it. He posted it under somebody else's name because he didn't want the blowback. It got discovered that it was him. NBC does not refute anything or even attempt to refute anything in the article. Nothing about Hunter Biden's China ties, Ukraine ties, Russia ties, nothing. They just go and say, well, it can't be credible because this guy didn't use an alias. But yet Miles Taylor, who CNN proudly had on their show, Cuomo had him on, I think, yesterday or today, this was the guy that was supposedly was the high-ranking DOJ official that was leaking information to CNN about that was anti-Trump campaign or Trump administration. Sure enough, he was a low-level staffer at the DOJ at the time and wasn't even in the position that he was in at the time that he wrote the article. So, again, you got to take it with a grain of salt. Left wants nothing to do with the Hunter Biden thing, but will run to every fire that is burning of Trump ties to Russia. So, but they'll fall in line with their belief system and their editorial restraint of anything casting a Democrat or progressive movement in a negative light. So you should probably know this about Glenn also. He's a vegan. He's an avid animal rights activist. He lives in Brazil. He built an animal shelter there for rescue dogs and staffs it with homeless people that are now earning a living there. He's anti-organized religion. And like I said, he lives in Rio de Janeiro with his husband, David. So the left, this would be a guy that you would think is, outwardly spoken to protect free speech, protect our rights, hammers the Bush administration, hammers the Trump administration, hammers the Obama administration, goes after NSA and the collection of our data, protects Ilhan Omar or defends her, defends the United States, is anti to our foreign policy influence of Israel. And its occupation of the West Bank. So a lot of things there that the left loves. So you can't just dismiss him and say he must just be running. Now he's being paid by the right, which is the common thing, right? I must be being paid by the Koch brothers or Fox News. So before you just dismiss it entirely, understand who he is and the things he's broken before. So you would think that the left would support this type of person because he champions all the causes they warmly embrace. But he's overly critical of the people that the left despises. And so many of the people on the left will come out and attack him solely because of his position. And we should know more about Hunter Biden's laptop. That's all he's really trying to get to. Wants to know its contents and how, if any, Biden is compromised by China, Russia, or Ukraine. The same things, the same concerns that every Democrat progressive was out there beating the drum to out front of the White House for days on end, everything else, saying Russia, Russia, Russia. You're a Russian stooge, you're a Russian agent. But right now, it seems Democrats want nothing to do. They don't care. Matter of fact, they're probably just saying, look, I don't care if Biden's in the pocket of Putin. I just want Orange Man bad out, which is hypocritical. It's a double standard. But like some people have said, if Democrats didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. But Glenn is exactly the type of person that we should all want to be. In order for us to be free and to bring us news and information that is unsolicited, or not unsolicited, but that's unedited, right? That's just coming to us. He's asking the questions. He's doing the hard-hitting journalism that nobody seems to want to do these days. So he's an investigative journalist of the truest ilk, I guess. You can look at like the Cheryl Atkinsons of the world or the Lara Logans of the world, who were demonized by, I forget the reporter's name, who was trying to break the Jeffrey Epstein story 5 years ago and couldn't get it because ABC or whoever, CBS, whoever it was, shut her down. So you're seeing this across editorial boards all the time. So if they're going to be doing it to Greenwald, who can't they do it to, right? He's yet another victim that honestly doesn't care if you're conservative, libertarian, or progressive. If you speak against or challenge the aristocracy and authoritarianism in today's political progressive landscape, you will be silenced. If Biden wins, this isn't going to change. If it now comes out that the Biden laptop sure enough was all this damning evidence and the left tries to attack him, they're going to be demonized. They're going to be shut down. I say that kind of half-wittingly because I think they're going to use this if Biden does come to victory on Tuesday. They're going to use this as the reason to push that 25th Amendment. He's been compromised. Democrats are going to say, for the good of the party, the good of the nation, we're going to do what Republicans should have done. We're going to remove him from office. Now, Kamala Harris, who's their real prize, that's who their real jewel is. Biden's just the Trojan horse to get there. So that's what they're trying to implement. But we should all be fighting for the Glenn Greenwalds of the world, and we should all demand answers to the questions he asks and the facts. If he provides them, have someone refute the facts. So, in yesterday's America, he would be embraced by everyone. He would be the Ted Koppel or the Dan Rather of the time. But in today's progressive, controlled Orwellian America, all voices are at risk of being silenced. So, and he went on Tucker Carlson tonight to explain as well. So you can find that on YouTube. Speaking of Tucker Carlson, on a show last night, he had a segment in which he covered a story about a shipment of highly sensitive documents that his producers in New York were shipping to him while he was out in LA doing an interview with Tony Bobolinsky. For those who haven't seen the Tuesday Tucker show, highly recommend it. Tony Bobolinsky is very credible, had one of the highest clearances you can have at NSA and DOE. Check it out. He's trying to protect a troop of Navy SEALs is guarding his family at his house right now because he's received death threats. So the left is definitely out to get him. But Tucker says that his producers had contacted or had tried to send him a package that had contained a disk with documents. And they contacted the shipping company, and it got lost. So the shipping company, which he didn't name on the air, which I respected, said that they were working diligently to locate the package. They were negotiating or conversating back and forth the whole time, and supposedly they were apologizing and everything else. So jumping ahead, Tucker said that the company had contacted the producers. They said the package had been discovered at 3:44 in the morning after it, I guess, shipped, but the contents were no longer in the package. So, which is something very weird, because they found the package, but not the disc that was inside. So the package had been tracked from the time the producers, two people from the office of the production company or Tucker's producers, dropped it off at the retail location to it being loaded on the truck, and I think it actually was on the plane to come out. But a little sketchy on that. But otherwise, it had been it had gotten to the facility, but it vanished. So today, news later on this afternoon was that the package mysteriously reappeared, but the contents were not in it. So the producers had sent pics of the contents of the package. They knew what to look for, frantically searched, went on to, record saying that they were exhausting all efforts and were apologetic that yet angry that something like this could happen. They value their clients highly and their trust in their shipping. So nevertheless, tonight on the show, like I said, the disc was found. And of course, those documents contain what Tucker had said were documents that were very damning to the Biden family. Of course, the big tech, the left, the mainstream media are hurriedly and unabashedly trying to bury that story, as we just covered in the Glenn Greenwald. So, unfortunately, the company was UPS. So UPS was the global shipping company. And tonight they said they just basically gave a canned, "Hey, we found it. Sorry, we can't do anything more. Send it back to you. Now you have it," which is very odd because they were asking. Tucker kept asking, "Well, why can't you find out like what happened to it? If it's scanned in and it was found on the floor by an hourly employee who then just went in and popped it on somebody's desk, and they didn't know that it was lost until they saw the segment on Tucker Carlson's show last night. Did they find it?" So it's very odd that, kind of like the Jeffrey Epstein jail cell, no cameras in a sorting facility. It defies logic. They might as well just tell us that the cameras just happened to blink off for 15 minutes, like in Jeffrey Epstein's cell. So go figure. But what we're looking at here is we're trying to figure out, did Hunter, in these documents, I'm assuming they're damning documents that shows whether or not Joe and the Biden family, but in particular Joe, pimped out his brother Jim and son Hunter to sell access to America's interest, or selling American interest in order to enrich themselves. Money laundering doesn't show up on tax returns. For all you people that say, "Well, just look at his tax returns," you don't launder money on tax returns. Sure, you can say the same thing about Donald Trump. We got to release his tax returns. Well, again, you're not going to find money laundering if he's laundering money. You don't tell the IRS that you're laundering money. So the censorship of anyone writing these type of stories or publishing these articles on this topic is only going to continue, after Election Day, regardless of who wins. And again, why? Because the left is going to use this as a reason to get rid of Joe. But if he doesn't win, then Trump's going to push this, and the conservative media is going to push this to say, "Hey, what was going on this entire time? Let's find out more." So that covers that on that. Let's get to the economy real quick. As you probably heard today, it grew by its largest increase ever, 33.1%, despite most of our largest economic states remaining in only kind of a partially open format. These same states just happen to remain the most closed, have the highest unemployment rate across the nation as well. So as you may have guessed, California, Illinois, New York, Michigan, all remain relatively closed down, and all have generally in the bottom 10 for unemployment. California's at 11%, Illinois 10.2, Michigan at 8.5. So these governors aren't doing their citizens any service, any benefit, while they keep them locked down. And deaths flatline. Cases are spiking, but deaths have flatlined. Kids should be able to go back to school as they're doing in Europe. But nevertheless, so I'll give you some favorable news for you pro-Biden folks. The last BLS, Bureau of Labor and Statistics unemployment report showed a 7.8% unemployment. If that's pro-Biden for you people that are pro-Biden, because no incumbent president has ever won re-election with an unemployment higher than 7.2. However, Trump's approval rating is still above 50%. It dipped to 52% from 56%. So for you pro-Trump voters, you'll be happy to hear that no incumbent president has ever lost a re-election with an approval rating over 50% going into Election Day. Obama's was in 2012 campaign. He had exactly a 50% approval rating. These are both according to Rasmussen. He had a 50% approval rating at this exact point going into Election Day. So it seems that Trump is more favorably viewed at this point in his presidency than Obama, despite over 90% of all mainstream media stories across all networks, all media being negative to him, to Trump himself, his family, and his policies. Let that one sink in for a second. All right, ready? So polling, some very interesting things happening during the past couple of days that don't bode well if you're in the Biden camp, which is why you're going to begin to see panic setting in going into this weekend. Political article I'll reference here in a second can highlight that. But I said last week that by Thursday, meaning today, that you'd begin to see the Democrats getting nervous of their base turnout and internal polling not looking so favorable for them in the key battleground states. They had pushed all this early voting, get out the vote on election, on mail-in ballots. Don't go to the polls because you're going to drop over dead and die. So make sure you get your ballots and mail them in. Well, it's not working out that well for them so far right now, as we're seeing across the nation. Look at Florida first. Since Trump absolutely must hold Florida, or he really has no shot of winning, or very, very little shot. He basically would have to carry Arizona, I think Nevada, Pennsylvania, 3 of the 4 Rust Belt states, or 2 of them, I guess, Michigan and Wisconsin, or Minnesota, Michigan, some combination of the 3. So, if he doesn't win Florida, it's going to be a long night. But going into Election Day, the Democrats held an 88,000 ballots returned in-person voting edge, 88,000. Trump won by 113,000. As of today, it's looking good for Democrats, and that's 163,000. It's good, right? Not really. It's based on the fact that the GOP out-registered Democrats since 2016, and despite the fact that the western part of the state didn't turn in polls today, or their ballots today, because of Hurricane Zeta, this number will be lower tomorrow. It was 213,000 yesterday. It's at 163,000 now. So it's 50,000 in one day. So the GOP is eating into that about 2,000 per hour. So at that pace, they'll be ahead in ballots by Sunday. And so by Election Day, if they're up, then it's going to be, and knowing that the GOP usually turns out more voters on Election Day than Democrats do, it's going to be potentially a very long election night, as it relates to Florida anyway, for Democrats. One telltale sign is, and this is what the Politico article referenced, but Miami-Dade County, a traditionally very strong blue hold in past elections, has Democrats down on ballots returned, down and in-person voting, down by 7,000 ballots. Palm Beach is down 3,000. So usually Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade are strong Democrat strongholds. So if they're losing those, and Broward is still blue, but not by a huge margin, not enough to make up for, if this pace continues, to make up for Palm Beach and for Miami-Dade. So, and another good news for Republicans is that Trafalgar has a 2.7 lead as of tonight. So not good for Democrats in Florida, which may indicate why Stephanie Powell, I think is her name, was on Fox News this morning essentially saying, she didn't say it, but essentially saying that it looks like Florida, and I think, was it Michigan? It was either Michigan or Ohio, that they were basically done. They're not really fighting for anymore. So moving out to the West, and Arizona and Nevada. Arizona, since Monday, the GOP has cut into the Democrat ballot lead from 90,000 down to 57,000. 59% of the Democrat ballots have been returned. Only 51% of the GOP's have. Unaffiliated or other affiliated still has 60% outstanding ballots. So usually based upon the presidential approval rating and kind of where you are, whether you're better off today than you were 4 years ago response, those are usually big deals for independents. And they currently, if it's yes to I'm better off today than I was 4 years ago, and the approval rating is above 50, those independents are generally going to break for the incumbent. So it looks like the independents will probably break for the president going in. So Dems have an uphill battle in Arizona for what it's looking like. So again, going back to the Rust Belt. Now we'll do Nevada first. Nevada has narrowed dramatically, according to Trafalgar, and is now Biden by just 2.3 points. I think he was up by 7 earlier, I think mid last week. Most polls had him up by 7. Trafalgar now has Biden up by only 2.3. Michigan, kind of skipping back now to the Rust Belt, Michigan is now Trump 2.5. And again, this is based on Trafalgar, who, again, was the most accurate on the battleground polls in 2016. He has Michigan now Trump 2.5, Biden at +1. And then Minnesota, Trafalgar is now firmly moved into the Biden camp at 3.2. So with Trump's 2.5 point lead in Michigan, if he's going to close that gap in Nevada and Arizona, then Biden absolutely has to get Pennsylvania and he has to get Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see, how Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan play out. But a lot of the unions are breaking, at least the union stronghold, not the top brass, but strongholds seem to be breaking and endorsing Trump as it relates to the baseline folk. So what I would want to say too, kind of to close this out, is when you are going to vote in person, please make sure that your ballot doesn't have any markings on it. They're discounting those ballots. So if it has any type of ink mark or anything on the ballot itself, they're being tossed. So please request another ballot. It's crucial. We want to make sure that your vote counts. So thank you for joining. That's it for tonight's episode. Join me tomorrow. Again, where I'll cover more of what you're not being told by the mainstream media, or disregarding their spin and actually giving you the truth about what they're not telling you. And I'll possibly do a live stream tomorrow on some breaking news that I expect to be coming out. So again, thanks for joining again. Please like and share our content if you're enjoying it, and good night.